It started with an invitation. A simple, casual note slipped under my door by my neighbor, Sarah. Surprise party this Saturday. Don't be late. The words were written in her usual bubbly handwriting, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Sarah had always been the type to rope the whole neighborhood into her wild ideas. Halloween scavenger hunts, wine and paint nights, you name it. She once hosted a Bring Your Weird Pet barbecue, where someone actually showed up with a snake in a stroller. Amanda didn't seem particularly excited about the party when I told her. Sarah's parties are always a bit much, she said, half-heartedly sipping her coffee. Come on, it'll be fun. We never go out anymore, I replied, a little too cheerfully. Lately, things had been tense between us. Not explosive, just strained. I figured a night out with friends and neighbors might loosen us both up. Amanda gave me a tight smile and said, "You go ahead. I'll see if I'm up for it." That was odd. Amanda always went to Sarah's parties. The two of them were close enough that they'd occasionally disappear together on shopping trips that turned into late dinners. "She gets me," Amanda would say whenever I joked about her little girls' night escapades. I brushed it off, but something about her dismissive tone stayed with me all week. The night of the party, I dressed up, ready to play the part of the dutiful husband. Amanda was still getting ready, which wasn't unusual. She always took her time. I knocked on the bathroom door. "You coming or what?" Her muffled voice came through the door. "I'll meet you there. Don't wait for me." That was new. Amanda never let me go to a social event without her. I hesitated for a second, then shrugged it off and left. Sarah's house was already buzzing when I arrived. Music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses spilled out onto the driveway. I grabbed a drink and made the rounds, trying to shake off the weird vibe that had been following me all evening. "Where's Amanda?" Sarah asked, sidling up to me with her signature grin. "On her way, I think," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. The party carried on, and I started to relax. I was in the middle of a conversation with one of Sarah's cousins when the door swung open, and Amanda walked in. She froze the second she saw me. It wasn't the kind of pause where someone is happily surprised to see their spouse at a party. No, this was the freeze of someone caught in a lie, trying to figure out their next move. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. And then, the real kicker, trailing 2 steps behind her, laughing at something she just said, was Brian, my coworker. Felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My chest tightened, and for a second, I thought I might actually pass out. Brian, of all people. The guy who couldn't stop making obnoxious jokes in the break room. The guy who had asked me, for marriage advice just a few weeks ago. Brian caught sight of me and stopped laughing. His face turned as white as a sheet, and he immediately stepped away from Amanda like she was radioactive. Amanda, on the other hand, recovered quickly. Too quickly. She plastered on a fake smile and breezed over to me as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, honey, you made it," she said, leaning in for a quick kiss on the cheek. I stepped back. "What the hell is going on, Amanda?" The party went silent. Every single pair of eyes in the room was on us. Her smile faltered for a split second, but she didn't miss a beat. "What do you mean? I told you I'd meet you here. And him," I said, jerking my thumb toward Brian, who was now standing awkwardly by the snack table, looking like he wanted to melt into the floor. "Oh, Brian," she let out a forced laugh. "We just ran into each other outside. What a coincidence, huh?" The silence was deafening. No one in that room believed her, least of all me that I stood there, staring at Amanda, my pulse hammering so loudly in my ears that I could barely hear her feeble excuse. "What a coincidence," she'd said, like she wasn't walking into a party with Brian, a man I now realized she'd been seeing far too much of lately. Sarah, bless her nosy heart, broke the silence. "Wow, small world, huh?" she said, her voice dripping with fake enthusiasm. Her eyes darted between Amanda and me like she was watching a live soap opera. I couldn't let this slide. Not here, not now. "Amanda," I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "We need to talk. Outside. Now." The crowd parted like the Red Sea as I turned and marched toward the front door. I didn't even look back to see if she was following. I knew she was. She didn't have a choice. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but it didn't clear my head. My thoughts were a chaotic storm. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. She stepped out behind me, closing the door softly, like she didn't want anyone to hear what was coming next. What the hell was that? I asked, turning to face her. She crossed her arms defensively. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Amanda. You walk in here with Brian and you expect me to just, what? Ignore it? Pretend I didn't see what I just saw. Her eyes narrowed, and I saw a flicker of something, defiance. We did run into each other outside. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been acting weird for months, Amanda. Months. Late nights, secretive texts, lying about where you've been. And now this? You want me to believe this is just some random coincidence? You're overreacting, she snapped. Brian and I work together. It's normal to see each other outside of work sometimes. Stop making this into something it's not. I stepped closer, lowering my voice but making sure every word hit like a hammer. If it's so innocent, why did you freeze the second you saw me? Why does he look like he just got caught with his hand in the cookie jar? Tell me the truth, Amanda. Right now. Her face flushed, and for a brief moment, I thought she might crack. But then, she did what I never expected. She doubled down. You're paranoid, she hissed. You're always looking for something to be wrong, and honestly, I'm sick of it. Do you even hear yourself right now? Accusing me of… what exactly? Walking into a party. Felt like she'd slapped me. Her words were sharp, calculated, meant to make me question my own sanity. But I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Amanda, if you think I'm stupid enough to fall for this, you're wrong. I'm giving you one chance to come clean. One. Because if you lie to me again, I swear… Oh, spare me the theatrics, she interrupted, rolling her eyes. You're embarrassing yourself. And that's when I snapped. Not in a yelling, throwing things kind of way, but in a cold, quiet way that even I didn't see coming. You want embarrassing? I said, my voice steady but deadly. I turned and walked back inside the house, leaving Amanda standing there. When I re-entered the party, all eyes were still on me. Sarah, ever the social butterfly, tried to smooth things over. Everything okay? She asked, her tone overly chipper. I ignored her and strode straight to Brian, who was still lingering awkwardly near the snack table. His drink was untouched, his face pale. Brian, I said loudly, so everyone could hear. How long have you been screwing my wife? The room erupted into chaos. Gasps, whispers, a dropped glass. Brian stammered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I growled, stepping closer. You think I haven't noticed? You think I don't see the way you look at her? The way she's been sneaking around? You might be a lot of things, Brian, but subtle isn't one of them. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. And then, Amanda stormed back into the room. What the hell is wrong with you? She shouted, her face a mask of fury. What's wrong with me? I shot back, my voice rising. I'm not the one sneaking around with someone else's spouse. Tell me I'm wrong, Amanda. Look me in the eyes and tell me you haven't been cheating on me with Brian. For a second, just a second, her mask slipped. I saw the guilt, the panic. But then she put it back on and snapped. You're insane. This is exactly why I didn't want to come tonight. You're always making a scene. A scene. I laughed bitterly. This isn't a scene, Amanda. This is the truth finally catching up with you. Sarah, standing by the kitchen island, cleared her throat awkwardly. Maybe we should… stay? I said firmly, cutting her off. Let them all hear this. Let them see who you really are, Amanda. Go on. Explain to everyone here why Brian looks like he's about to throw up. Explain why you've been so distant. Why you flinch every time your phone buzzes. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing to say. The silence that followed was like a vacuum, sucking the air out of the room. Amanda stood frozen. Her lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Brian looked like he wanted to vanish entirely, and the crowd of partygoers, now unwilling spectators, watched in wide-eyed shock. Cat got your tongue? I said, my voice steady but cold. The adrenaline coursing through me made everything sharper. The way Amanda's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. The way Brian's hand trembled as he set his drink down on the table. Amanda finally spoke, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "You're humiliating me, Eric." "Humiliating you?" I barked, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. "You humiliated yourself the second you thought you could play me for a fool." Brian took a shaky step forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. "Eric, man, I swear." "Don't," I snapped, cutting him off. "Don't you dare try to talk your way out of this. You've got nothing to say to me. Nothing. The only thing I want from you is the truth. Right here, right now." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. His eyes darted to Amanda, silently pleading for backup. But she just stood there, frozen. "Brian." I pressed, my voice low and dangerous. "You owe me that much. Tell me the truth, or I'll make damn sure everyone here knows exactly what kind of person you are." The tension in the room was suffocating. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by wide-eyed horror. A few people whispered to each other, their voices barely audible over the pounding in my ears. Brian finally broke. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "So it did happen," I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay composed. Amanda snapped out of her trance, her voice sharp and defensive. "It wasn't what you think, Eric. It was a mistake. A one-time thing." I turned to her, my eyes blazing. "A mistake? A one-time thing? Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I haven't noticed the late nights, the secrecy, the lies? Don't insult me, Amanda." "It didn't mean anything," she shouted, her voice breaking as tears welled up in her eyes. "I was lonely, okay? You've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in your own world." "Oh, don't you dare try to blame this on me," I snapped, cutting her off. "I've been distant? I've been working my ass off to give us the life we always talked about. Meanwhile, you've been sneaking around behind my back with him." I pointed at Brian, who flinched like I'd slapped him. Amanda's tears spilled over, but I felt no sympathy. She wasn't crying out of regret. She was crying because she'd been caught. The crowd was completely silent now, their discomfort palpable. Sarah stepped forward, her voice hesitant. "Maybe we should all give them some space." "No," I said firmly, my gaze never leaving Amanda. "Let them stay. Let them hear it. Let everyone see what you've done." "Eric, please," Amanda whispered, her voice trembling. "Please what?" I shot back. "Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? That's not how this works, Amanda. You made your choices, and now you're going to face the consequences." Brian, still trembling, tried to slip away toward the door, but I wasn't about to let him off that easy. "Where do you think you're going?" I asked, my voice loud enough to stop him in his tracks. I think I should go," he stammered, his face pale. "You think running away will fix this?" I said, stepping closer. "You think you can just walk out of here and pretend you didn't destroy my marriage?" "I didn't mean for this to happen," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "But it did," I said, my voice cold and steady. "And now you're going to own up to it. Tell everyone here how long this has been going on. Go on, Brian. Tell them." He looked at Amanda again, silently begging for her help, but she was too busy wiping at her tears, her head down like a guilty child caught red-handed. 3 months, Brian finally mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. The room gasped. Someone dropped a glass, the sound shattering like the trust I'd once had in Amanda. I nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. 3 months? I repeated, my voice hollow. 3 months of lies. 3 months of betrayal. And you still had the audacity to look me in the eye every day like nothing was wrong. Amanda finally looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you, Eric." "You didn't just hurt me," I said, my voice shaking with anger and grief. "You destroyed us. You destroyed everything we built together. And for what? For him." She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked toward the door, my footsteps heavy with the weight of everything I just lost. Before I stepped outside, I paused and turned back to face the room. "You can have her, Brian," I said, my voice dripping with venom. "She's not my problem anymore." And with that, I walked out, leaving Amanda, Brian, and the stunned crowd of onlookers behind. The night air hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't stop walking. Couldn't. The walk home felt like trudging through quicksand. My legs moved mechanically, but my mind was racing, spiraling between rage, betrayal, and a numb disbelief. Amanda and Brian. 3 months. All the late nights, the guarded phone, the subtle changes I'd ignored. They came crashing down on me in horrifying clarity. When I reached the house, I didn't even bother turning on the lights. The familiar space felt alien now, tainted by what had just unfolded. I sank onto the couch, staring blankly into the darkness. My hands were trembling, fists clenching and unclenching as I fought to process what had happened. The front door creaked open. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Amanda. "Eric," she said softly, her voice hesitant. I didn't respond. My jaw was clenched so tight it ached. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Can we talk?" I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Talk? Now you want to talk? After 3 months of lies, you think a little chat is going to fix this?" "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. She moved closer, but I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Don't," I said, my voice cold. "Don't come any closer." She froze, and for a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said, her words trembling with guilt. "Like this," I repeated, my voice rising. "So what? You had a better plan? Were you going to sit me down one day and say, 'Oh, by the way, I've been cheating on you with Brian for 3 months, but it's no big deal?' Or were you just going to keep lying to my face and hope I never found out?" Her lip quivered, and she wiped at her tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. You keep saying that," I snapped, standing up and towering over her. "But every choice you made, every lie, every secret was a knife in my back. So don't stand there and tell me you didn't want to hurt me. You did, Amanda." Over and over again. She crumbled under my words, sinking onto the arm of the couch. For a moment, I almost felt pity for her. Almost. But then I remembered the look on Brian's face, the whispers from the crowd, the sheer audacity of her walking into that party with him like it was nothing. "I was lonely," she said, her voice barely audible. "Lonely?" I repeated, incredulous. "You were lonely, so your solution was to shack up with another man? That's your excuse." "It wasn't like that," she said quickly, her tone desperate. "It wasn't about him, Eric. It was about me. I felt invisible, like you didn't see me anymore." Her words hit me, but not in the way she probably intended. I wanted to argue, to shout, to tell her she was wrong. But a small, treacherous voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe she wasn't. "I worked late because I was trying to give us the life we dreamed of," I said, my voice quieter now but no less firm. "I thought we were a team. I thought you understood that." "I did," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But somewhere along the way, I don't know. I got lost." Her words hung in the air, heavy with guilt and regret. But they weren't enough. They didn't change what she'd done. "I loved you, Amanda," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "I trusted you. Do you have any idea how much it took for me to believe in us? To believe in you?" Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. "And you threw it all away. For him. A guy who doesn't even have the guts to face me like a man." "It wasn't serious," she said quickly, as though that would soften the blow. "Not serious?" I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "So you're telling me you risked everything we had for something that didn't even matter to you?" Her silence was answer enough. I let out a deep, shaky breath, running a hand through my hair. "You know what, Amanda? I don't care why you did it. I don't care what you made your choice, and now I'm making mine." "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It means we're done," I said, the words slicing through the air like a blade. I'm not staying in a marriage where I'm nothing more than a safety net for when your little fling gets boring. Eric, please, she sobbed, reaching for me. We can fix this. I'll do anything, I swear. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job if I have to. Just don't give up on us. I stepped back, her touch feeling like acid on my skin. You gave up on us the second you let him into your life. And there's no coming back from that. Her sobs filled the room as I turned and walked toward the bedroom. I grabbed an overnight bag, throwing in whatever essentials I could find. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. Where are you going? She asked, her voice breaking. Anywhere but here, I said without looking back. I walked out the door, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me like a boulder. The cold night air hit me again, but this time it felt different. This time, it felt like freedom that I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours. The city lights blurring as I sped past them. The roads were mostly empty, the world outside quiet and oblivious to the chaos storming inside me. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't bear to stay in that house, surrounded by memories Amanda and I had built. Memories that now felt tainted. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of an all-night diner, the kind of place with peeling vinyl seats and flickering neon signs. The waitress barely glanced at me as she poured coffee into a chipped mug and slid it across the counter. I wrapped my hands around it, needing something, anything, to ground me. The weight of everything hit me like a tidal wave. She had begged for us to work it out, swore she'd do anything to fix it, but her words rang hollow. What could she possibly do to undo months of betrayal? I replayed the scene from the party over and over in my head, dissecting every glance, every word, every silence. The way Brian avoided my gaze. The way Amanda's voice shook, not from remorse, but from the fear of being caught. And then it hit me, there had to be more. 3 months. That's what Brian admitted to, but it didn't add up. Amanda's changes started long before that. The secretive texts, the new lingerie, the way she started looking past me like I wasn't even there. Brian might have been the latest chapter, but I was certain there was more to the story. I pulled out my phone, hesitating for a moment before dialing a familiar number. Matt, I said when my coworker answered, his voice groggy. Eric? It's 2 in the morning. What's going on? I need a favor, I said, my voice low. It's about Brian. You work with him more than I do. Has he said anything? Done anything weird lately? Matt was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear him processing the sudden intrusion. Weird how? I hesitated, my grip tightening around the phone. Like, has he been bragging about someone he's seeing? Or acting secretive? There was another pause, and then Matt's tone shifted. Look, Eric, I don't want to get involved in whatever's going on, but yeah, there's been talk. He's been acting like a kid who thinks he's won the lottery. Always sneaking off to take calls, showing up late, leaving early. People have been joking that he's got a sugar mama or something. My stomach churned. Did he ever mention Amanda? Matt exhaled sharply, and the silence that followed was deafening. Eric, man, I think you need to talk to your wife. I already did, I said, my voice flat. I just need to know if there's more. He hesitated again before muttering. A couple of months ago, he slipped up during lunch, said something about meeting someone at the Marriott downtown. But when we pressed him, he just laughed it off and changed the subject. The Marriott. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Amanda's work trips, her late nights, all those times I had blindly accepted her excuses. Thanks, Matt, I said, hanging up before he could respond. My hands shook as I scrolled through my phone, searching for something I hadn't dared to look for before. I opened our shared email account, the one we'd set up years ago for bills and travel bookings. Amanda had never been great at deleting things. Sure enough, there it was. An email confirmation from the Marriott, dated months ago. Thank you for your reservation. My blood ran cold as I read the dates. She told me she was at a conference that week. I clicked on the reservation, my chest tightening with every detail. King Suite, 2 guests. My vision blurred with rage, and I slammed the phone onto the counter, startling the waitress, who shot me a wary glance. I forced myself to breathe, to think. This wasn't just about Brian. This went deeper. She had been lying to me for far longer than I realized. The truth was unraveling before me, each thread pulling me further into a web of betrayal. And the more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Amanda had been living a double life right under my nose. I finished my coffee in one bitter gulp, tossed a few bills onto the counter, and walked out into the night. I wasn't just going to confront her this time. I was going to get answers. Real ones. No more lies. No more games. And I wasn't leaving until she told me everything. By the time I got back to the house, the sun was threatening to rise. Its pale light crept over the horizon as if mocking me. A reminder that time marched on no matter how shattered I felt. I parked in the driveway and stared at the front door, dread and fury warring within me. Amanda's car was still there, which meant she hadn't bolted. Not yet, anyway. I stepped inside, the house eerily quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She was sitting on the couch, still in the dress she'd worn to the party, her makeup smeared from hours of crying. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mix of guilt and hope. "Eric?" she began softly, standing as if to come closer. "Sit down," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. She froze, then sank back into the cushions, wringing her hands nervously. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table, the Marriott email open on the screen. "Explain this," I said, my voice cold. Her eyes widened as she glanced at the screen, and I saw the color drain from her face. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she looked up at me, her lips trembling. "It was for work." "Don't," I said, my voice rising. "Don't you dare feed me another lie, Amanda. Work trips don't involve king suites and 2 guests. So, who was it?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a cornered animal, panicked and searching for a way out. "It wasn't Brian," she blurted out. I froze, her words hitting me like a sucker punch. "Excuse me?" She swallowed hard, her eyes darting everywhere but to me. "It wasn't Brian at the Marriott. That was someone else." The room tilted, and I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. "Someone else?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "How many are there, Amanda? How many men have you been sneaking around with while I've been killing myself to make this marriage work?" "It's not like that," she cried, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt stuck. Invisible. Invisible?" I snarled, cutting her off. "You keep saying that. But instead of talking to me, instead of telling me you were unhappy, you decided to throw yourself at anyone who'd pay you attention." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no pity. "It wasn't about them," she said, her voice cracking. "It was about me. I needed to feel something." I slammed my hand on the coffee table, making her jump. "You needed to feel something? So you destroyed our marriage for a thrill? For a damn ego boost?" "It wasn't like that," she whispered, shaking her head. "Then tell me what it was like," I demanded, my voice sharp and unrelenting. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for years. So go ahead, Amanda. Lay it all out. Every dirty detail. I'm done playing your games." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment, I thought she might finally tell me the truth. But when she looked up, her eyes were defiant, her jaw set. "I don't owe you every detail," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I hurt you. But I don't deserve to be interrogated like a criminal. I'm still your wife." "Wife?" I spat, the word tasting like poison. "You think that title still means something after what you've done? After what you've chosen to do?" "I didn't choose to fall apart," she shouted, her voice raw. "I didn't choose to feel like I was drowning in my own life. And I didn't choose to marry someone who'd stab me in the back the moment things got hard." I shot back, my voice shaking with fury. Her defiance crumbled, and she broke into sobs again, her face buried in her hands. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I felt nothing but a hollow ache where my love for her used to be. "I want you out," I said quietly, my voice cold and final. Her head shot up, her eyes wide with shock. "What? You heard me?" I said, crossing my arms. "I want you out of this house. Today. Pack your things and go. I don't care where. Go to Brian, go to the guy from the Marriott, go to hell for all I care. But you're not staying here. Eric, please, she sobbed, reaching for me. Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. There is no us, Amanda, I said, stepping out of her reach. You killed that the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you. Her sobs filled the room as I turned and walked toward the bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The silence on the other side was deafening. The morning dragged in slow motion, every second a lifetime. I heard Amanda moving around in the living room, drawers opening and closing as she packed. I stayed in the bedroom, not trusting myself to face her again without exploding. When I finally emerged, the sight of her nearly stopped me. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, a single suitcase by her feet, her eyes red and swollen from crying. For a moment, she looked like the woman I had married, broken, vulnerable, human. But then I remembered everything. The lies, the betrayal, the moments she chose someone else over me. You're still here, I said flatly, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, clutching a tissue in her hand. I was hoping you'd change your mind, she whispered. I shook my head. No, you need to go. Eric, she began, standing and taking a step toward me. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, don't throw everything away. We've been through so much together. Doesn't that count for something? Her voice cracked, and for a fleeting second, I felt the ghost of what we once had. The laughter, the plans, the love. But ghosts aren't real, and neither was the woman standing in front of me anymore. It counts for nothing when you chose to destroy it, I said, my voice cold but steady. You didn't fight for us, Amanda. You didn't even give me the chance to fight for you. You went behind my back, and you didn't stop until you were caught. That's not love. That's selfishness. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the tissue tighter. I never stopped loving you, she said desperately. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You stopped loving me the moment you let someone else into your life. Don't stand there and tell me you love me after what you've done. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. Save it, I said. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime. She broke then, her sobs shaking her entire body. I turned away, unable to watch. I heard her grab her suitcase and move toward the door. When it opened, she hesitated. Eric, she said softly. I didn't turn around. I hope one day you'll understand, she said, her voice trembling. Don't count on it, I replied, staring out the window. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed was suffocating. For a long time, I stood there, staring at nothing, trying to feel something, relief, anger, closure. But all I felt was the hollow ache of everything I'd lost. I finally sat down on the couch, the spot where she had been just moments ago. The suitcase was gone, but the faint scent of her perfume lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of what used to be. It was over, really over. I thought about everything I had said to her, every word I'd hurled in anger and pain. Maybe I could have been softer. Maybe I could have let her stay and worked through it, given her the second chance she begged for. But no matter how much I questioned myself, one truth remained unshakable. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I grabbed my phone, scrolling aimlessly until I found Sarah's number. She deserved an explanation, at least. Hey, I said when she answered, her voice hesitant. Eric, are you okay? No, I admitted, the word feeling heavier than I expected. But I will be. I ended the call before she could say more. I wasn't ready to talk, to explain, to unravel everything that had just happened. For now, I needed quiet. Sitting there in the empty house, I realized I wasn't just mourning Amanda. I was mourning the version of myself that had believed in her, the part of me that thought love could conquer anything. Couldn't. And now it was time to figure out who I was without her. The days that followed were a blur of numb routine. I went through the motions of life, work, meals, sleep, but nothing felt real. The house was quieter than it had ever been, the absence of Amanda like a gaping wound in every room. I thought the silence would be a relief, but instead, it became my worst enemy. It forced me to confront my thoughts, to sit with the wreckage of our marriage and try to make sense of it all. I spent hours replaying everything, searching for answers to questions I couldn't stop asking. Was there something I could have done differently? Did I miss the signs earlier than I should have? Was there ever a moment where this could have been? And then, one night, as I sat on the couch with a drink in my hand, I realized something. The answers didn't matter. Amanda's choices weren't my fault. She made them. She chose to lie, to betray, to walk away from the life we built together. No amount of self-reflection would change that. It wasn't my job to fix her mistakes. The realization was both painful and liberating. For the first time since the night of the party, I felt a flicker of clarity, a glimpse of what life might look like without the weight of Amanda's betrayal crushing me. The next morning, I took the first step. I gathered everything that reminded me of her. Photos, keepsakes, even the little notes she used to leave for me on the fridge, and put them in a box. I didn't throw them away. Not yet. But I needed them out of sight, out of reach. I also started reaching out to people I'd unintentionally pushed away during the marriage. Friends I hadn't seen in years. My sister, who'd called me countless times, only for me to respond with, "I'm too busy." They didn't ask for details and I didn't volunteer them, but their support was immediate and unwavering. One evening, Sarah came by unannounced, holding a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. "I figured you could use some company," she said with a tentative smile. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Come in." We sat on the couch, eating out of the takeout containers and talking about everything except Amanda. It was refreshing to laugh again, to feel human again. "You know," Sarah said after a while, swirling the wine in her glass, "I've known Amanda a long time, and I'm sorry, Eric, but this isn't on you." I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me long after she left. Over the next few weeks, I started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I went back to the gym, something I'd neglected for far too long. I picked up a new hobby, photography, something I'd always been interested in but never had time for. And slowly, bit by bit, I started to feel whole again. One day, I came across a journal Amanda had left behind in the rush to pack her things. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found pages filled with her thoughts. About us, about her guilt, about how she'd felt trapped in a life she didn't know how to escape from. It wasn't an excuse, and it didn't change what she'd done, but it gave me closure in a way I hadn't expected. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed herself, and that was something she'd have to live with for the rest of her life. I closed the journal and put it back in the box with everything else. It was time to move forward. A few months later, I filed for divorce. Amanda didn't contest it, and the process was surprisingly quick. When the final papers arrived, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, even a flicker of hope. That night, I went to the same diner where I'd sat the night of the party. The waitress gave me a small smile as she poured my coffee, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled back. The past still lingered, but it no longer defined me. As I sipped my coffee, I thought about what I'd learned from everything. Trust is fragile. Love is complicated. And sometimes, people we think we know will disappoint us in ways we can't imagine. But life goes on. If I had any advice for anyone reading this, it would be this: don't ignore the red flags. Don't let your loyalty blind you to the truth. And most importantly, don't let someone else's mistakes define your worth. You're stronger than you think. And no matter how broken you feel, you can rebuild. I did.